Good morning everyone. Today we are going to learn about MVC architecture, and which stands for model view and controller. Today we are going to learn about MVC architecture, that is MVC model view and controller, which stands for model view controller, and it is very important concepts used in software engineering and web development. So here MVC is a software design pattern used to develop applications in a structured and organized way. It divides an application into three main components. One is model, view, and the controller. The components, so it's why we are using the MVC is that it separates into different parts like model, view, and the controller, so that the code becomes easy to understand, easy to maintain, and easy to modify as well. So the first one is, and also that is the whole, when we say as a simple words, we say that MVC divides application into data, user interface, and control logic. That is called MVC. Okay. Now the components of MVC, we can say the first one is the model, that is which handles the data of the application. So handles data and business logic, and it interacts with the database, stores and processes data. And some examples like student details, product data, all these. So where it handles the data, we separate that part into model. Okay. So the model stores. So when we say the example of student details in the product data, we store the student name, marks, records, and all these into student system. That is student details. So the model is equal to data plus logic. The next one is the view. So here the view is a user interface, and it displays the data to the user. So UI is the user interface, what the users see. So it displays the data to the user and represents the output. So web pages, forms, screens, all these things are viewed by the user. So that we call that part of the application comes under view. So web pages, form, output screen. Whenever user sees something on the screen, that's the view. So view is equal to what user sees. Next, the third is the controller. It acts as a bridge between the model and the view. So it handles the user input, connects model and the view, and control application flow. That is when we click onto that, this thing should happen. So that's called the button example. The example is the button click actions. When we click onto the button, what actions it has been performed. So controller is equal to decision maker or the manager, we can say. So that is the MVC flow diagram is view to the controller to the model. That is the view, controller, and the model. Now here, when we say how it works, the user interacts with the view, and the controller receives a request. Okay, user interacts with the view, controller receives the request, controller updates the model, and the model processes the data, and again view displays that updated the data. So these updated data will be displayed by the view. So that is a cycle we call it as. So the first is the user interacts with the view, then the controller updates the model process, controller receives. So when user sees the view, that is user interacts with the view, the controller receives a request. Then the controller updates the model, and the model processes the data, and the view displays the processed data. So this cycle continues whenever the user interacts with the system. So one example if you take is an online shopping website. So we know in the online shopping website, we daily do that. Okay. So the model, that's the product data. View is the product displayed to the display page. It's called a view. And the controller is that add to the cart, that action, whatever the action that we perform, that's called the controller. So these are so now we will go to this example. This is one of the example of model view controller, how we splits the data, that whole application into three: model, view, and the controller. Now why we are using this MVC architecture. See, MVC architecture, we have initially said it is easy to maintain and the reusable code. That part of the code can be reused again in other applications, and better organized. It's an organized way of writing an application. So better organized way and faster development and easy for debugging. So whatever the changes required or updates that require, it is easy to do it as well. So these are the advantages of MVC architecture. Now, before concluding, we say that MVC improves the structure, improves the structure of the application, because it divides the application into model, view, and the controller, and it separates the concerns effectively. Okay, and widely used in modern frameworks. So most of the frameworks are used with the help of developed with the help of MVC architecture. Even the Laravel is a framework for the PHP that is also using the MVC architecture. That is a model, view, and the control. It divides applications into model, view, and the control. Now we know which component handles data, that is a model, and which component displays output, that's a view, and which component connects them, that's a controller. So this is an organized way. So MVC, when we use MVC architecture, is an organized way of dealing with the data and the scalable applications. And that's it. Thank you.